Well, some of them will go out, and some of them won't.
There he is. There he is, right on time. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's 6 o'clock. It's time to get this thing started. This is the July 10th City Council of Lula work session. We want to welcome everybody here tonight. If you want to sit down, take your places, and we'll get this thing organized and come to order. The first thing we're going to do tonight is say the pledge to the flag. Everyone stand. Thank you. Now it's time for citizen comments. Anybody want to come speak? Everybody knows the rules, right? No comments tonight? Okay, I guess we'll go right into it. The first item on the agenda is the invocation. I think Joey wanted to address this.
Sure. Council approved your invocation policy at the last meeting, and I believe a chaplain is here to deliver your invocation for the evening.
Father, we love you. We're just thankful for this opportunity to gather as a community. And Father, we just pray that this evening, God, that there would just be unity in the room. And God, even in areas where we're not unified, God, may we, Lord, just have a peace, Lord, to do things cordially. And God, just pray that your will be done. God, just thankful for every person that's here, for every person joining online, God, that they're wanting to be a part of their city. And Father, we just pray that everything would honor you tonight. And we ask this all in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, has everybody seen the minutes from the last meeting? And we vote on those next week. Everybody see any changes? Let Tangent know. We're going to correct it. Your month, this month is Show Us Your Colors promotion. This month and next month. Put your red, white, and blue up there and send us pictures. I'll go to council meeting questions at citylula.com to register, and there'll be a drawing next week for July and in August for August. So show your patriotism. All right, finance. Dennis?
All righty. Hey, this is fun. We just finished up the fiscal year. So if we talk about the first week of the year, that wouldn't be near as much fun. So let's talk about how we ended up last year. So it's, pats on the back to, I think staff deserves a lot of credit for this. So let's talk about the general fund initially. So we budgeted $1,495,386, and as y'all know, we got the ARP money, so I always take that out because that would distort things remarkably. Nonetheless, even when you knock that out, we ended up bringing in $1,549,000 under the general fund. So when we look at expenditures, same type of thing. You want to be careful about that. We had some council contingency items that came about, certainly because of some land acquisition as well. So the good news is we may not have to capitalize that, and the reason I say that is where we brought in $1.5 million, our expenditures, when you adjust, we're actually 1.5, and when you adjust the $123,000 out of them, the expenditures actually were 1.385. So at the end of the day, we'll talk about this in the month of August. The council have the opportunity to recognize that in the general fund and an adjustment, or capitalize those dollars overrun. At the end of the day, between the general fund expenditures and the revenue, when we pull those numbers out, you still have 164,000 positive cash flow. What a sweet deal. Water and sewers similar, because we make some adjustments on that. We always talk about how we underestimated the amount of tap fees that we received, because we only budgeted 125,000. We brought in 398,000, so that would distort revenues remarkably. Plus, we took some credit, as you know, with the GFA loan for sewer line I, and we backed out that 441,000. At the end of the day, we budgeted $928,260 for the utility fund and revenue, and when you made those adjustments, we ended up bringing $1,016,777. So that was a good position to be in. Then, of course, when we looked at we made some adjustments because of miscellaneous expenses and some acquisition as well, and some costs that ended up in the utility fund against sewer line I that will be adjusted out. That was $248,000. At the end of the day, our actual expenditures were $814,000 versus a budgeted $928,000. So you had a positive cash flow there of $202,000. What a great position to be in. Let's pray that this fiscal year allows us to do the same thing. So more importantly, how much money you got in the bank? So let's talk about that for a second. So as you know, we did pay off the wastewater treatment plant, so that number reflects. If you saw that last month, that's always fun reading. You could wake at night. Anyway, good news is, again, a positive position to have $400,000 in the bank as we sit here today. Not too shabby is what it boils down to, and overall, leaves us, unfortunately, in a very positive position where the council can identify next month, begin to identify some capital projects, and then we're actually going to talk with finance as early as tomorrow about some of those opportunities. And as you know, we've got 3 bids out on the floor right now. Well, we've got 3 developing bids out that can knock some dollars into that. But overall, what a great position to be. Like I said, I hope we find ourselves in that same position next year. And then I'll remind you that, thank you, Tansy, for having the budget. So where we should be at about 4% on budget, we're still at 100%. We brought in a grand total of $3,377, but Tansy spent $12,120. So I guess we either pay the bills or not, but it always happens that first 2 months of the year where everything kind of plays catch up and what have you. But overall, anybody got any questions on that position? Because, we're in a positive place to talk about it right now.
We'll take all the positive news we can get.
Like I said, let's replay this next year and hope we came out. I don't think there'll be any ARP money, but even when we take that out of the equation, we were good stewards of the dollars, and we got a lot of bang for our buck. A couple of other things. So we talked about in the budget and the adoption. We talked about this for about 4 or 5 months, not in great detail. We actually keep bringing it back up. 5-year rate changes for water and sewer. So I'll remind the council that the study that y'all have looked at is 3% water and 5% sewer. So we'll readdress those with Finance Committee, and we'll bring that back up as well with Utility Committee. The thing that worries me about those numbers are that the original intent was to allow us to start doing some capital improvements with those rate figures. when we're experiencing 6, 7, 8% increase in material price like we did this year, we're gonna have to revisit those rates every year to make sure we're meeting our goals. I'm not concerned at all where we sit today. I'm concerned if this continues on, so just being good stewards in that regard. Banks County T-Splosh. So everybody want to know why that's on there?
Because they approved the,
Well, they did. The great state of Georgia, normally they charge 1% to collect the dollars. And that was part of the signed agreement that we all agreed to, that 1% would go to the state. Well, they don't want that 1% showing up on any certificate. They're still going to take the 1%, don't misunderstand me. But they don't want it on that certificate of distribution. So I hadn't got it yet, Joey. They called me last week about it. And so that's, I mean, hopefully we'll get it this week. But basically will be a new signature page. Our percentages will go up in a minor sense, but at the end of the day, when we collect our percentage of dollars, it'll be less than 1% collection. That's all. I mean, I wish I had something better to tell you. It's not a bad thing, it's just awkward. Here we are a year plus later. And by the way, that money starts in October. So grant payment, good news is, you know, every dollar counts. We just received a check last week for final out with a grant that I was finalized in Georgia Emergency Management, and doesn't sound like a lot, but you add up $6,380, we got a check like that every month, we'd all be happy. So just to let you know on that. Investment policy, we'll again talk about that with finance. And I remind y'all, when we did the budget, we were looking at what opportunities would be there. Y'all will get a chance to see that more frequently when we adopt the capital component. There's better than 5.17% money out there right now that we should be taking advantage of, and trying to park some of those dollars that we have as soon as we can, because I don't think that market's going to stay that strong. That's for 11-month period. So, but you know, that can certainly serve us well. Anybody got any questions for me?
no, me. Next, water and sewer.
So, has anybody noticed the power's been going out pretty frequently around here lately? Besides your cell phone service? So it's been taking a tally. I'll tell you, ironically, for those in the audience who may be aware of, the council certainly is, first thing I want to talk about was Belton Bridge water line extension. I'm meeting with the engineer tomorrow. Hopefully they'll have some numbers back to us and they'll be ready to put that on the street. Chattahoochee water tank exterior maintenance. So I met with the contractor last week, and to clean the tank and to paint it with the type paint that they're going to be using, they would require us to drain the bowl entirely for 3 weeks. So that's unacceptable, and especially during the summertime, and it's more than likely that we're going to move that into late October, early November, and then we're working on the schedule to how much time it's going to take in cleaning, what have you, versus the exterior painting. But
Was that a surprise to us? Did we know that was coming?
No one had a
That's
clue. As a
what
matter
I
of fact,
thought. It sounded like a violation of contract, doesn't it?
well, it wasn't a violation of the contract, because that's actually what transpires in the contract. It says we get to set the dates and times. So when we came to that point, that's when they brought up, well, they could start as early as July 11th. And I said, well, let's go through everything else first. And then it became apparent that we'd have to drain the tank. So, and that's just a matter, what it boils down to is you can't have the condensation of an inside temperature of the tank and have the adhesion of the paint on the outside at a different temperature. So, you know, but the period of 3 weeks is what bothered me most.
Really?
You know, the idea, nonetheless, I mean, that's going to be, wouldn't have mattered who we use, what word, again, in the contract, we get to set the dates. So I still haven't arrived at a date. We're going to do some testing on the pressure system, and that might determine whether or not I spoke to y'all about doing it late October, early November. We might be able to do it sooner than that because we have the other pipe tank that generally gives us about 95 pounds of pressure. We're going to test that before we go any further.
What's the capacity of that tank?
So that's 95,000 gallons.
The one on
The
Chattahoochee?
blue tank. The
No.
Chattahoochee tank, because of the elevation, is the 300,000 gallon bowl, but it'll only hold about 278,000. So, and to remind you, tanks, yes, you have storage off of them, but really elevated tanks are all about pressure, and that's what we build off those tanks. So they help amplify the amount of pressure that we have in the system. So when you take that down, that's why we want to do the pressure test on the what we call the county line tank. But we know that we learned the hard way, didn't we? Back in December, we learned what that's like without the tank being full or empty, actually. And but then again, we also didn't have the county line tank full at that time either. So we'll see how that goes, and we'll keep you all apprised as well as the utility committee on that. Consumer confidence report. Remind everybody there's copies over there. So that's this past year. So that's a big deal for us, especially because recently, I think in the last week, I saw about 17 articles about the quality of drinking water and where they had done some studies about your tap water and what have you. Well, for the most part, those studies were identifying a component that's found in plastic bottles that they call a forever element. And fortunately for the city of Lula, we get groundwater, and so that's not an issue for us. And I can see where it's an issue for a lot of other communities. But read that report. It says that what we do every day as far as maintaining the system, how often we test the system water along those lines. And for those in the room that drink our water, you know already, we're very fortunate to have what we have. And I was in, matter of fact, I won't name it, but I was in another community just south of here over the weekend and went to take a sip, and all I could smell to begin with was chlorine. And thank goodness we don't have to do that here. We add chlorine, but not to the extent that they do. So we're fortunate in that regard. So next item is the generator radiator. So for those in the audience that hadn't heard this, council's very familiar. So the radiator on our 12-year-old generator at the waste treatment plant went out, and we're talking about a very big unit. Matter of fact, I got some pretty pictures. Council, share around. If you ever want to know, just look through those and pass them down. Anyway, so the radiator went out, which is unusual because it's a big diesel engine and only had like 1,400 hours on it, something like that, because we actually operate it every week just to make sure it works correctly and put it under load. Nonetheless, the radiator wasn't an item that we could repair, so we had to replace it. Well, the council had to juggle, well, we can't be without a generator, can we repair it, all those type things, only to have them, council went forward and said, we'll replace the radiator, only to have them come out Thursday morning as scheduled, pull it out, and find out the new one they ordered didn't fit. And not only didn't fit, it was too large. And fortunately, I say fortunately, we weren't the one ordering the parts. This is a Cumming diesel generator, and this is what they do, and they went by their own specs. We actually purchased originally from them 12 years ago. So the error was on their part. Well, now we're stuck with a disassembled, that's the pictures they're looking at, radiator, and yet we still have to be operational. Well, I went into somewhat of a panic mood on Thursday afternoon late and let the council know this was going to be a challenge. We just can't be without a generator at that facility. So we went out and we actually found a portable generator that we could rent at a ridiculous price of $12,000 for 2 weeks. And instead, we were very fortunate. We actually are part of two organizations, Georgia Rural Water and Georgia Water Professionals, and we called both of them up, and Georgia Rural Water had a portable generator that they delivered to us on Friday morning. And I say all that, we did put in the new transfer switch only to have the power go out at 4:47 on Friday afternoon. So we actually ran the generator again. It went out on Saturday. Does anybody know that? Remember that? No fault of ours, all about Georgia Power. They're obviously having some issues in this area. So we ended up running the generator for 13 hours, and this is one of those God moments where you're very appreciative. It just all came together, and how fortunate for us, and the reason I say that is, so let's go back to Cumming Diesel. So they were able to pull the old generator, the whole radiator out, obviously, but they didn't have a replacement. One wouldn't be immediately available. They wouldn't even know what to order because they claimed they ordered the right part number. I'm sure they did. Something else was screwed up. So the idea was take the old radiator out because we've got that disassembled, go and get it fixed the best we can. We're shipping it actually to Alabama. Joe, you might want to write this down. Dennis said we might actually save money. Well, we're not paying $9,000 in parts. We know that. And I just got a quote for $4,300 to rebuild the generator, mount it in the housing, and then I'll still have to pay Cummings Diesel to put it all back in place. But it looks like there'll be some savings back to us. What I was worried about initially is being out of service and how we'd collect on that service because it wasn't our fault. So now, cross your fingers that we actually get this thing back in house for 3 weeks. Georgia Rural Water, that we're very appreciative of, asked us if it was possible that we could maintain their portable generator on site in the future so they would have a central location in the northern part of the state to, in case somebody else ran into the same problem. So I thought about it for all but 2 seconds and said absolutely. So we are now the proud stewards of a big fat generator, and we are very appreciative. And this is going to be an ongoing story, so how unfortunate, and then how things came back together, we're very appreciative of, and have that type of service out there. So anybody got any questions on that? I would if I was in your shoes.
That's that same storm that flooded town too, Friday afternoon.
Oh my gosh, man! I don't know, but we recorded, and I think totally inaccurate, over 9 inches, and I think it was more than that, and it came within like 45-minute period. But we had flooding everywhere you turned. So, anybody got any questions for me on water and sewer?
I think you got it. Appreciate it, Dennis. Unless somebody else got something, I got nothing. Okay, item number 6, zoning plan committee. The adoption of the IBC is still ongoing, and we're all trying to get it worded right so that everybody's happy with it. So I'll listen to the discussion.
Yeah, I just, I know that you guys are having a meeting tomorrow, I believe, correct?
That's right. Well, that's what's been proposed.
But yeah, proposal. So I just wanted to make mention of 4 key things I just want you to remember. I know the last 2, I haven't been able to observe. I know I'm not part of the committee, so I can't really speak during your committee. But I just want to point out these 4 things, and I hope that you take these into consideration during your planning commission or your planning and zoning committee meeting. As I've said before, the 10 items, and I know that you now have a copy of it. And I know I printed out several here for anyone else that might be in attendance tonight. They could see those too, because I know I've gotten a lot of inquiries from citizens, wanting to know, well, what are these 10 items that you keep talking about? So these are the 10. And this is the proposal that I had sent back in June. I know that seemed to, we didn't have it, and I know I didn't send it electronically to you, but I did this time. But those are the 10. Just keep in mind that, when I'm evaluating these, understand that, I still am considering, safety of our community. That's utmost. Okay, so it's not that these 10 items that are being suggested by the ICC themselves, who write the code, to not require a permit, that it's not you know, that we're saying, hey, we don't want to make this safe. This is safe. The ICC, you know, already designated it was so insignificant from a safety concern that they recommended that it not have permits. Item number 2, I wanted to just make mention, I know that it had been stated in the past about, you know, a reference to like item number 1 being the storage sheds, and whether they'd be shanties or not shanties, irrelevant. But it was made, there was a comment that was made that, you know, by allowing these 10, that people would be able to put those in their front yard. Matter of fact, I think it was mentioned that one of our council members would put 10 of them across the front yard, and that's just not the case. And unless it was changed in the last subdivision regulations or the last zoning, I know that, you know, as far back as 2013 on our zoning, it specifically states that, I've got it here, I'll read it to you. It's section 711 on that one. I need to make sure that it's still in our active zoning, and I know Dennis is going to send me a copy of the current ones. But accessory buildings and uses shall be permitted only in side or rear yards, except as otherwise provided by these regulations. So, you know, I don't want anyone to be confused that there's a possibility someone will be putting sheds in their front yard. That's just not the case. That never was. Item number 3 that I have was talking about setbacks. And I know that there had been a lot of discussion about, well, we have to have permits because we have to know where the setbacks are, that someone has to go out and look at that. Keep in mind that the subdivision regulations that were just recently passed in the last couple of months, there were significant increases to those setbacks. I mean, markedly so. And I don't have a copy of that for everyone. However, let's see what I do with that one. Here it is. You know, we went from, like in most of our residential properties, you know, setbacks went from anywhere from like side yards of 15 feet to 25 feet on both sides. From the rear lot, like an R1, residential one, it went from 25 feet to 100 feet. And, you know, I'm arguing that, you know, we should follow what Hall County said by saying that it should be 5 feet, just like that's what it is in Hall County, as long as you build your accessory structure not within 5 feet of the lot line. They're okay with that. And I'm okay with that too, and I think everyone in our community is as well, because these setbacks, they really were discussed, and the way that we passed this most recent, it was really to make sure that the buildings, the occupied buildings, not unoccupied accessory buildings, but occupied buildings, whether they're putting their main home or building a new subdivision, putting that home there, or even putting up I don't know what you want to call it, an apartment or something on the property, a mother-in-law suite. I know it had been by many terms, but you know, an occupied structure you would not want within 5 feet. I get that, and that's kind of how, you know, it was interpreted on our most recent subdivision regulations as far as the setbacks. So I just wanted to make that point, and it's something I hope you consider during your committee meeting. And then number 4, it had been mentioned before that by not permitting, we'd be generating some sort of liability for the city, and that's just not the case. By not permitting, we are not becoming liable for anything that may happen or any disputes between neighbors. The ordinances that we have are there, and if someone wants to challenge that, let's say we did say you can put a storage building, an accessory structure at 5 feet, but no closer to a lot line than 5 feet. Let's say that somebody did violate that, and they just went right up to the lot line. Maybe someone had a fence on the lot line, and they put that structure right on the fence. Well, what we're doing by not permitting, we are actually giving the power back to the citizens to be able to solve those problems themselves, and there are remedies. They can call the city and ask for codes enforcement to go out and evaluate. If the rule is, and it would be the ordinance that we would pass, if we say this, 5 feet, if they in fact, according to codes enforcement, violated the 5 foot, requirement, then the offending party would be, have to, go to municipal court and get that addressed. Now, of course, these are not permanent foundations. They don't have electricity. They don't have plumbing. These buildings should be moved or be able to be moved. And the expectation from the municipal court is that it would be moved in order to resolve it. if, and for some crazy reason, someone does not want to comply, our municipal court does have its remedies to address that, but to a limitation. Right now, they have a limitation of $1,000 as far as a fine goes, but no more. The recommendation, you know, after speaking with attorneys, is that the person who is objecting to someone who has violated this, they have the right to take them to Superior Court. And Superior Court would be the best place if they can't get the issue resolved with our own municipal courts, because the Superior Court would have injunction powers, and they would be able to order the removal or movement of the building and be able to place their injunction powers on there, such as, you know, judgments, liens, things of that nature. So there are a lot of different powers in the Superior Court that would address that. So I just wanted to alleviate the concerns over those. Those are the four that I want to make sure that everyone that's on the committee understands going into it. I'm going to do my best to try to make the meeting, if you guys do decide to meet tomorrow, just to observe. So, but if you have any questions about what I presented, and I've done a lot of homework on this, many hours, lots of phone calls with lots of different companies and attorneys. If you have any questions on this, please reach out and contact me. Now, I know most of it was focused on item number 1. Items number 2 through 9, everyone seemed to, you know, there were even modifications to that, and everyone seemed to be okay with those. But then item number 10, which was the decks, again, I'm going to say that the ICC deemed no significant, you know, safety issue. You know, it's a deck, it's 200 square feet. I know it had been mentioned to me that, you know, that people would have so many people on there, it would be a party deck and it'll fall. Well, it's no more than 30 inches. It cannot be more, it cannot be 31 inches, it has to be 30 or less. And even if you built the structure, even attached to your house, which this case it's not attached to the house. It doesn't serve as a means of ingress or egress into the home. It is 30 inches or less, not attached to a dwelling. And, you know, even if you did build such a thing attached to the house, not that, you know, and you did get it permitted, you still would not have to have rails on it at all, because it's 30 inches or less. So I just want to point all of those things out, and that the ICC, the IRC, the IBC, those codes that were built, the ICC designated those as recommendation not to permit. So that's all I'm trying to do, is make sure, and I've gotten phone call after phone call, people are requesting, you know, what are these 10? They're very interested in them. And it's been nothing but positive support that I've been receiving, and from those who were just curious and inquiring as to what these were. So I want you to take that into consideration, that there really is no harm in passing those 10. Now, keep in mind, there were other things that were modified in the document, and we all agree on those things, and one of them was, you know, the arbitration process, or the, I forget, Dennis may know what it was. I think we had Joey help us rewrite some of it, but it was, yeah, the council would not be qualified to hear and make decisions based on those who were, you know, objecting to any decisions that were made, the arbitration. So I just want you to consider those things tomorrow, if you meet tomorrow, as you go through these. But I appreciate you letting me talk about them.
Anybody else want to talk about it?
Well, Tony, do you understand that this IBC code, this is third countries and third world countries and all that? Do you understand that that's what the IBC code is?
What is your statement, Gene?
The IBC code.
The IBC, the International Building Code, yes.
International Building Code, it has nothing to do with this, with us. It's, that's a third world country, building, what they have out there.
Oh, so you're saying that the IBC, the International Building Code, has nothing to do with Lula, that it's
Do you
third
want-
world
you want
countries, I
The city
think.
of Lula to look like a third world country.
The IBC that we're talking about was created by the ICC, the International Codes Commission. The International Building Code is made up of, I don't know, 236 different chapters around the nation, mostly centered within the United States. 48 states in the United States have adopted it. That's why, and the state of Georgia is one.
Well,
The-
why then, if we don't, why just parcel it out, just take the whole IBC code and pass it then?
Well, that's the beauty of it. The IBC, the ICC, that's adopted or accepted by the state of Georgia, that is our requirement. They carve out one thing to allow municipalities to do their own portion of how they want to enforce it. Because not every city has a municipal court. They don't have those. Some do, like we do, right? So it's part one, okay? There's part one and there's part two. Part one deals with enforcement, and the state of Georgia said all the code, the requirements of the code, these have to be adhered to, just like almost every state in the nation. Part one, they say when you want to take someone to court, municipal court, we're going to give you a little leeway because not every city has a judge on payroll. They don't have a municipal court. What are the fines? Some fines might be excessive in certain areas, where other areas might have a different, level of fines to achieve the same results. So they give you that leeway. They didn't want to say, as a state of Georgia, that you have to do all these things. Now, some states do. They say, nope, you don't get a right to choose how you want to enforce it. We know better than, the citizens that you represent. You're going to do it this way from a state level. But that's not the way Georgia did it. And most states don't. They give us the leeway to enforce those things and impose the penalties the way we think that it should be done in order to achieve the objective. But keep in mind that all of the code that was written is still a requirement. IBC and IRC, that's the International Residential Code, as addition to the International Building Code. It's all part of it together. I didn't know everything when I walked into this. I learned so much by doing the research, and I thank you all and credit you guys for putting me to the test, because I learned a lot. It was fascinating to learn as much as I did, as quick as I did, and I really got to understand it. But one question, it wasn't even but a few months ago, I didn't know exactly who was it that was writing this code. And turns out, like I said, I want to say it's like 236 different chapters. Most of them are right here in the United States. And matter of fact, it's not adopted throughout the rest of the world. It's only a small list of like maybe 15 nation countries that also use the IBC. So, like I said, it was very fascinating. I'd be glad to send you some web links to go look at this stuff yourself. It's quite fascinating. So I want.
Another question was, why
Sure.
do you keep comparing us to Gainesville? We're not Gainesville,
Well, we're in Hall County.
but we're not Gainesville.
That's correct. I never said that we were comparing ourselves to Gainesville.
Well, in several of the instances, you have said that, sir.
No, I have not. I've always referenced Hall County.
Hall County or Gainesville.
Well, I make a distinction between Hall County and Gainesville.
I said I made a mistake, I apologize.
Sure.
But, driving us to Hall County, we still not, we live in Hall County, but we still not Hall County with the city of Lula.
That's correct. We are the city of Lula, and I hope that we stay away from trying to manipulate these 10, because the manipulation of these 10 things lends itself more towards an HOA, a homeowners association. And I think that if people want that level of scrutiny and requirements, then they would be in a homeowners association. We don't need to impose those on the entire city of Lula. There are 1,034 homes in the city of Lula. Pardon?
What do you propose when it's already in the zoning?
I'm sorry, what do I propose on what?
What do you propose when it's already in the zoning, if it's already in the zoning ordinance? What do you propose to change to accommodate this?
I'm not understanding your question, Gene.
If it's already in the zoning ordinance?
If it is already in the zoning ordinance, what is it?
Whatever you're talking about here is already in the zoning ordinance. And you want to change the zoning ordinance from what you got posted, how do you propose to do that?
The reason that we're considering this, and Dennis can correct me if I'm wrong, our ordinance did not reference the IBC in great detail as it is being proposed now.
True.
Okay, so what we're doing is taking a step forward into making sure that we are aware of what our requirements are with the state of Georgia, and making sure that we are adopting uniform language that people can understand regardless of where they live within the state. If they want to move to Lula, they would be able to understand what the rules are that they would be expected to abide by, and that they're not obsessive. And okay, so that's the point. We did not have adequate, clear verbiage. There was question, And that's why we're considering this. That's why it was presented to council well over a year ago, because I remember when this did come up. It was over a year ago.
A year ago.
Yeah.
Actually, July.
Yes. So,
And you're correct, those were all options available to the council to decide if they were gonna adopt that component or not.
yeah. So they're not in our verbiage that we have on the books right now, although the state of Georgia still requires that our permits, when we do have an inspection, the inspector has to make sure, their job is to make sure that all of this IBC is enforced. But remember, those 10, we have leeway on,
Let me ask you this,
that we never had leeway on before because we didn't even talk about them.
let me ask you this, talking about portable buildings that can be moved. In our ordinance, we supposed to have, they're supposed to be a tie down, they're supposed to be tied down just like a mobile home.
When you mention mobile home, you're absolutely correct, because that is actually what the General Assembly in the state of Georgia, when they heard, these bills being proposed, it was to address tiny homes, because tiny homes fell into a different category that was still vague, and they wanted to make sure that if somebody was going to occupy that structure, that it was held to the same standard as a mobile home. And in the state of Georgia, the mobile homes did require a tie down. And so the state of Georgia General Assembly said, okay, if people are going to be occupying these buildings and they're going to call them tiny homes, then the tiny home, an occupied structure, would require to have a tie down, not an accessory structure. That was a misinterpretation of the law when it was presented to us. So just keep that in mind. I hope that addressed that issue, because I had heard that argument before. As if by that logic, you would want to have a tie down for anything in your yard. Anything. The list could be.
Trampolines moved last week.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
Anybody else? All right, I got a couple of questions.
Sure.
We don't want to exceed 144 square feet. Who determines the size of this? The person building it?
It's 144 square feet. That's the rule.
How do we know if they built 160 square feet? How do we know that? We're not there on property.
That's correct. You have to give people the ability to obey the laws themselves. I mean, you're wanting to enforce. I mean, we could go down that rabbit hole of all the things that you're entrusted to do as a citizen of the United States without having to require a permit to make sure that you did the right thing. That's forced compliance. And I think that's oppressive, and that is not what our citizens want. If somebody violates the 144 square feet,
Where'd that number come from?
that came from Hall County. I will tell you this.
That was me.
Okay.
Because I researched on Hall County website to see what
Where did
their
that-
regulations were.
Where'd they make that number up from? I mean,
Well, I
why do
don't
it,
know.
why do it size 12 by
Well,
12?
right. Let me address that. The International Codes Commission that wrote these 10 originally, as it's written, says 200 square feet. And I would love for it to be 200 square feet because I think that that's fair. But Hall County says no. So if we want to consider ourselves, we are Hall County, we could say, well, you come to Lula, we'll let you build up to 200 square feet, not 144. But that might not be in our best interest.
You think?
We might agitate some people. So we are part of Hall County. We're all citizens of Hall County, and if Hall County thought that that's the way it should be done, kind of the same way we had to deal with the animal control ordinance, why don't we be in line
With Hall County.
and say it's 144 square feet? That way, that takes the argument, any argument that it's excessive and over the Hall County recommendations and requirements, we take that argument off the table. We'll just stay in line with everyone in Hall County. People can move about throughout Hall County and understand and not have to be surprised by, oops, I've got this new rule that I was unaware of. I've lived in Hall County my whole life, and they may have moved 5 times. The rule still applies. It's a convenience thing.
So, in other words, if somebody wants to build their 12 by 16, 192 square foot building, or bring one in and set it down, and all of a sudden somebody said, wait a minute, that building looks too big. Then we send the building official out there.
Yeah. Specifically, you mentioned 12 by 16, correct?
192 square feet.
Right. That exceeds the 144. It is less than the ICC said, 200 square feet. But it would be up to someone who says, you know what?
That building's too
I
big."
don't like that building there because it's too big. The reason has to be there. You have to have a reason to be starting to
Well, we gave
file.
them the
right?
reason right here.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. We gave them,
And that's the reason.
we give them the reason. If it's
Now, I hope,
if
Joe,
it's
you're
not-
not going to go around looking at everyone's neighbor.
Well,
You're looking at
I
everyone's
don't
yard
have
to see how big
I'm not
their,
going to. It's not my job.
their buildings are.
The building official
Yeah.
is authorized to prevent occupancy or use of a structure where in violation of this code or any other ordinance of this jurisdiction. Section R 105.4, validity of permit.
Yes.
It means the building official
And-
can actually
and-
stop them from occupying that building.
Right. And like I said before, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. Keep that in mind.
I didn't understand what you just said.
Which is why it's very, very important for all of us to understand what these rules, laws, and that we're passing, that we understand that if we pass these laws and we didn't really intend them to be enforced, watch out. Somebody might come along and want to enforce them vehemently. So we need to be very careful of what these laws are.
Another one we've already got, all construction in excess of $500 requires a permit. That's
Say it again.
all construction in excess of $500 requires a permit.
Yeah, and where is that again?
It's on our building permit
Yeah.
procedures.
Keep in mind that if we pass ordinance like this, right? Because I mean, dollar amounts change. Did we adjust for inflation? Because everyone in this community might say, "I'm angry because you haven't adjusted these things for inflation," right? So when we pass these ordinances, right, we always have a clause in there that says this will be the case outside of anything else that we've already passed. The latest date takes precedence. Am I right on that, Joey? I may be wrong.
That's right.
Okay. So that's how we do that. That way we don't have to spend all year, because it'd probably take us 4 years to go through every single ordinance, which I believe, I don't know. I was looking, when I first was elected, I did receive ordinance, and I think I've received a file with well over 80 different ordinances.
That wasn't all of them.
Yeah, I know. And some of them are duplicated. Some of them, cross over each other. But that's how we address that, and it's with a clause that our lawyer guides us on to make sure that what we pass on this particular day is not confined by other things. So,
Another thing,
mhm.
IBC has a totally separate code for decks as opposed to any other construction. It's totally separate.
Understood.
It's totally,
There are several code specialties
right.
that aren't adopted by the state of Georgia. Only the IBC and the IRC are adopted by the state of Georgia.
But
Those are the ones that we have to abide by.
But somewhere along the line, we got to make sure that this deck procedure is followed, not using 2x2 framing. Somehow or another, it's got to be, you got to make sure they don't put 2x2s.
So this deck in someone's yard that's not attached to their house,
2x2s.
you want to go down this route. I mean, think clearly. Let's talk about it. Let's look at the deck procedures. So, do you have a copy of those so that we can make sure that everyone understands what you're talking about?
I'm not going to pay to get it. It's not a free copy.
Oh, it's not a free copy. So,
So I haven't bought it yet. So
well, and that's often
I know.
misinterpretation, because when a state provides that you have to abide by that law, the code creators have to provide you an opportunity to get that information for free, and that's to everyone. And I've got links to all of that. Now, if the deck one is a specialty, which is not adopted by Georgia, they don't have to let you have it for free because it's not adopted by Georgia.
So what
So
other,
it's irrelevant.
y'all build your decks the way you want them, is what the man just said.
Yep.
Well, this is not just this isn't every deck.
Everything under 200 square feet. Less than 30
this
inches
is
tall. Away from the house. Away from the house.
Yeah,
We could call it a platform, we call it a stage, or you call it a grandstand out in the middle of the yard. I understand that.
Yes.
Okay.
200 square feet.
That-
Because someone had mentioned to me it's going to be a party deck and there's going to be so many people on there. Well, calculate the space that you're dealing with there. How many people can you put on that? I mean, let's say you're pushing the limit all the way to 30 inches.
Only if it's not built properly, that's too many people on there.
Personal responsibility, Gene. Personal responsibility. Don't take away people's power to be responsible for themselves. They don't need a babysitter.
Nope. If it's not permitted, it won't cover it.
If you, that's
Homeowners will.
incorrect. That is incorrect. I have to challenge you on that, Joe.
Homeowners will,
Yeah.
that falls under your homeowners, your health insurance. I mean, at some point, we can't just dictate everything that's been done. I mean, like you said, personal responsibility. I could go out there and stand on the railing of my porch and fall off. That's still my personal responsibility. That don't have nothing to do with whether I had a permit or not. I don't know. I think we're stretching, overstretching power here on this one. I just,
You still don't
I
believe
don't-
it should have, handrails.
for 30
The code
inches.
does not
The code
require
doesn't-
it.
Yeah,
People build those all the time. You know,
I don't know.
have you ever been in a home that had a landing at the bottom of the stairs with no rail? Typically because it didn't have the height that required it. Sometimes it's a feature. Sometimes people put rails on those things anyway, and I would personally. But it's not a requirement. It's not a safety requirement. And I'll say this, since you bring up, the decks, you could have an empty piece of property in a field, and somebody walks on your property, stumbles on something, maybe you forgot to mow the grass properly. They can sue you, because they can sue you for anything, right?
I understand that.
And you're liable, okay?
I understand that.
It's an empty, flat piece of property. People have done this. Correct me if I'm wrong. Dennis, I mean, am I wrong here? Joey, am I wrong here? People, I'm not a lawyer, but people can sue you for injuring themselves on your flat piece of property. No structure there at all. They can sue you. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to win a lawsuit, but they certainly can sue you.
Well, people sue you today for anything, it don't make any difference what it is, they can sue you for.
Right. So let's not be oppressive with our citizens. This is something that happens across the country, that they don't require permits for this. Why should we? We don't need this.
What happens if, I'm trying to think how I want to phrase this. So, okay.
It's okay.
Never mind. I got it. Okay. Anybody else want to say anything about this? We'll look at the,
I just want to add one comment. As far as the construction of the decks, the code is clear about the requirements. So what I'm going to say is, I think it was suggested somebody could build them out of 2x4s.
2x2s.
Well, nonetheless, the code is clear about what requirements as far as those fixtures would be, so don't go build them out of 2x2.
Exactly.
I just,
No,
You
but I'm
could-
just saying,
I
if,
just
you know,
don't
we
think
don't, we
somebody
want
did
people to
that.
follow
The
the
code
code
is
for
clear
their
on that.
benefit, not for ours.
Yeah, it's not against the law to, put up a bunch of toothpicks and stand on top of it and hope that, you don't hurt yourself when you fall. I mean, it's just absurd. The premise is absurd. Like Dennis said, the code is clear on what constitutes a deck. This is just saying that if you build a deck that is not attached to your home, and we could go over it, and decks not exceeding 200 square feet in area that are not more than 30 inches above grade at any point are not attached to a dwelling and do not serve the exit door required by section R 311.4. Now, it does
Who do
say
you propose to enforce that?
you shouldn't need to.
need to.
If you don't if you enforce
If I can visually look at it and know it's more than 30 inches, it should be enforced.
by permitting it, now you're opening yourself up to liability. By not permitting it, you're saving the city from being sued for not making sure that, in this 2 inches of this 10-foot span, it was actually 32 inches, and now the city's liable for allowing that deck to be built. That's what we're dealing with here. You don't open yourselves up for liability. Give people personal responsibility again. That is their power, their right, and don't take it away from them. I've had so many people reach out and say they're continuously trying to take our rights away from us. And it's just astonishing to them that this line of thinking is present right now. Not in Lula, Georgia, that line of thinking is present. But I'll be glad to entertain you between now and your committee meeting, or even after your committee meeting, all the way to next week. I'll be glad to, any argument that you can come up with, I will be glad to provide you the answers that I've already found, and also do research if I am at a loss for any of them.
Thank you, Tony.
Yep.
Thank y'all. Anybody else? All right, number 7. The rezoning on Cornelia Highway and New Cornelia Highway is set to be heard by the Planning Commission on August 1st, and then by the City Council on August 21st. Number 8 is an invocation for the chaplain.
Yeah, that's a duplication.
I thought it was, so I wasn't sure. Okay. All right, the Planning Commission monthly meeting is scheduled for tomorrow, because last Tuesday's a holiday, at 6 o'clock. And the little ladies, I don't know. 26, okay. Thank you. It's Wednesday, July 26th at noon for lunch and 6:30 for dinner. The Historical Society is the 4th Monday, which is 2 weeks from tonight. And TextMyGov, has everybody signed up for it? Gets text messages. Matter of fact, it worked.
Not everybody, so come join the
Okay.
crowd.
One thing I would like to suggest is it's time to take that off the website. Every time you click on a page on a website, it pops up. It's just, am I the only one to get? I guess I've signed up for it. When I get tired
If
of
you
seeing it.
exit out, it won't come back. But you're right, it's made there to annoy
I
you.
know it does a good job.
Yep.
Okay, the committee meetings. So we're trying to meet. Let's see. Finance tomorrow at 4. Zoning planning tomorrow at 5. And utility committee, we're trying to get you ruled out Wednesday, looks like.
Yeah, so, Joey, could you be here tomorrow possibly for the zoning and planning committee? Were you coming for the, yeah.
I didn't see anything on that agenda, but yes, I can be.
Well, the only reason, I think it'd be an opportunity for us to discuss some of these other issues.
Sure.
I think everybody's heart's in the right place. We just gotta make sure we put it together at the end of the day.
You want to try it? Utility committee. Let's see.
Wednesday, Thursday is what you got down.
Yeah, now, my Wednesday's already gone, and so Thursday, I'm certainly available, so I can do whatever y'all wanna do on that.
Tony, Denise.
We're looking at what day?
Thursday.
How early can?
Oh, it's up to y'all.
I can't meet until after 5.
12:05, where was that? You still got travel time after 5? Is it
No, I actually have meetings scheduled through 5 o'clock.
through 5?
Yeah.
What's your, if
Mhm.
maybe 5:15, 5:30?
I mean, I can be here at 5. I can be here at 5. I can be here at 5.
Okay,
That's
that
what we
that
need
was
to
my,
do,
that was my
yeah.
question.
Yes.
If you were booked up
Yes.
solid till 5 or not.
I'm good with that.
5 o'clock Thursday? Dennis?
Hey, I'm gonna be here regardless, so y'all just tell me when.
Let's do 5 o'clock Thursday, guys.
So,
We're-
so just to confirm, the finance meeting, that's going to take place on Tuesday at 4?
Yes.
And the zoning and planning committee is going to take place immediately following at 5 p.m.?
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we're going to have an executive session tonight, but before we do that, we're going to have citizens' comments. Anybody else got anything to say? Let her go first.
Juliet Kelly Roberts. You mentioned the TextMyGov. Well, I called the city, I reached out to several other people. When we had the big storm, and I did call you, Mayor Joe, I left a message and said, hey, maybe we can use it to put up that the roads were blocked. I never saw anything on it. We just had another instance where right near Belton Bridge, the Main Street got shut down. There was nothing about it on there either. So if we're gonna utilize utilize it for things like that. Also, to let our citizens know, hey, by the way, big storm, completely shut down X road and Y road, figure out a different way.
I have no access to that, so I can't do it.
Yeah, so I'm not familiar with a road that was for any length of time shut
Bergin
down.
was shut down for a while.
Yeah, Burton, well, we got that cleared that day. Matter of fact, I helped clear that road personally, so.
Okay, well, I'm just saying, it-
I got your text now. I'd already cleared it when I've read your text.
Good evening, James Milligan, Hemlock Street. First off, I'd like to thank Councillor Cornett and Councillor Shockley for doing their due diligence, which apparently is free to everybody. Not everybody takes advantage of it. The invocation and the pastor, who decides what denomination of religion is represented, and does it change each month? Or is it just your personal pastor that you invite in?
What else you got? This is not discussion time. This is comment time.
Oh, comment time, okay. Well, I've got a comment for you. A lot of people that I've spoken to are thinking that you are planning to turn Lula into HOA. I strongly warn you against it.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Roy.
My name is Roy Hall, 52 Mountain View Parkway. Sorry, God bless each and every one of you. It's apparent to me that this ICB thing has become a political, it really shouldn't be. And I want to say that with all due respect to Mr. Cornett, I appreciate all your time and effort and everything that you've done to research. But I've known Mr. Bergin a long time. I've been in construction since I was 18 years old, off and on, through my life. I've built things. And I want to say that, first of all, I need to clarify something. This number 10, decks, y'all keep mentioning decks out away from a house in the middle of a yard or a field or whatever. Doesn't make any sense to me. That would not be called a deck. I even went into Webster and looked it up. And a deck is either what I grew up in South Florida, and I always thought a deck was on a boat, and decks are on boats, and decks are connected to structures, or may not be connected, but they're close to the structure so that you could egress or regress into the structure. So something that's built out in a field or a yard or whatever is not a deck by Webster's definition, and my understanding. That's a platform typically used sometimes when there's tent meetings or preaching, or maybe even in fall festivals, put a deck up, or not deck, but a platform for someone to speak, or for political reasons, or for whatever. So that's really not a deck. And as far as the 30 inches off the ground, I watched a pastor that they didn't apparently do theirs right, and even though it's only 30 inches, he broke his ankle because it wasn't built right. So that can happen. It's not really, to me, about liability as much as it is the safety of the public, in my view. But I know that the Planning Commission has done a lot of research, and Mr. Bergin has been doing this for a long time. And I know that he's been involved in planning and zoning and construction and development for many, 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 many years. And I would say that whatever the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendations are should be considered, because the man has got a lot of experience. And I'll have to agree with him with the I agree with what the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended. I agree with that, because it goes along with building standards as far as I've ever known. And it's trying to sue somebody. But your comment about is this? I see this being taken, and I've read on your elect Tony Cornett thing, all the stuff that you put in there. So it's obvious to me that you're taking this as an opportunity to campaign for your next election. That's fine. I don't have no problem with that.
Roy, be careful. Be careful, be careful, be careful, be careful, be careful.
About what?
Attack, attack.
No, there's nothing right. I said it's okay if someone campaigns. I'm not attacking.
Careful,
the man.
be careful.
I haven't said anything offensive.
Direct it to the whole council. Direct it to the whole council, not just one.
Pardon me. Okay, I apologize for directing you personally.
It's okay.
I didn't mean anything disrespectful.
That's okay.
in any way. I'm just making my comments, and I just said, God bless you. I don't have any animosity towards anybody, please. I'm a man of God first, and first and foremost, I hope that I can be a witness and just offer my advice and my opinion. But anyway, I just say God bless you all, and I hope that you can work this out. But I trust Mr. Bergin and the planning commission, and I would say they know what they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. Anybody else? Okay, it's time for Mordecai's moment. All right, Mordecai.
Thank you. I want to talk about the most important things to remember. One of the most important things in life is to inspire yourself and others to reach for the stars. Even standing on the ground, when you reach for the stars, you achieve more and create a better environment for everyone. Here is what we must do to determine where we go from here. We have to utilize our minds and our energies to make things better for everyone. Mr. Mayor, City Council, City Manager, and dedicated city employees, I feel like we cannot fail because we citizens are all behind you and willing to cooperate for the benefit of all. Let's be sure we ask ourselves what we need to do to make this a better city to live in, to work in, and raise a family, a city that is especially child-friendly. These are the goals we can obtain if we're willing to work together for the benefit of all and not for the sole benefit of a few. Let's all of us seek to do the things that we are like in order to make this a wonderful place to live and enjoy. Remember that we have obligations from the highest ranking officials to the child on the playground who can be taught not to litter. We can all work together to build a better life for each of us, and especially for the next generation. There is a payday for all of us, and that is why honoring obligations, duties, responsibilities make a huge difference and affect so many people. So if you've ever been hurt, you know the terrible consequences of indifference and hate. However, there is no need for retaliation. Vengeance is mine, says the Lord, and I will repay. He doesn't need any help from us to repay those who lie raised by trotting on the back of the innocent. We cannot let our personal feelings and attitudes prevent us from accomplishing the goals that better our community. A selfish attitude destroys the person and the position. If we have failed in the past, we must learn from the mistakes and go forward on with new knowledge for success. Well, I am convinced that we continue to work together for the good of our community. We can enjoy life in the here and now while making a bright path for future generations to follow. Thank you for listening to me. I call this time and moment with Mordecai. And I want to further say the things we need to think about concerning our future growth is not to be concerned about our growth after minimum will bring, entitled lives and property taxes. We are able to, as I understand our situation at the moment, to function quite well at the knowledge we have for how to raise our city quite well. However, in the future, if we add an additional series like park, recreation area, city police department could require us to have an additional revenue source. There is only a few establishments in Lula that have a license to sell beer and wine. So since the city doesn't sell distilled stuff by the package, and there aren't any hotels, I believe additional taxes aren't needed and necessary. Thank you.
Thank you.
You through? That all you got, Mordecai? Is that it? Are you finished?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Want to make sure you didn't get shortchanged. Okay, council comments. You want to start with Tony?
Sure. Just want to say thank you for everyone that's here, for coming out and participating and watching, our work session. Appreciate your input. I just want to say thank you for coming. And I'll say this: if someone has found some of my comments out there on the web, great. That's a means for me to be able to share my thoughts. And I hope that everyone came freely, and it is about freedom. Please come see that information if you want to. I appreciate that. That's really all I've got. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you for coming out and for being attentive and polite. It's been a nice meeting tonight, and I appreciate it.
I say about the same thing as Denise said. I second hers, but I just wanted to add that you're the people of the city. The city council is not. Y'all's voices is the ones that we need to be listening to. And I appreciate y'all for coming. Hope y'all have a great evening, great week. Please come back again.
Your turn, right?
I'd like to thank everyone for coming. I hope everybody had a great 4th of July. Enjoyed some fireworks. Sound like Mountain View had a lot of them going off up there, didn't it? I could hear them in the house good. Thank everybody for coming. Come on back next week.
Okay. I want to thank everybody for coming, and we'll do it again next week. We're going to go into executive session now to discuss personnel matters. We don't.
Mr. Mayor, would you allow me one comment?
I'm sorry.
No, if I just had one comment for clarity, and this is really for the council, although it was mentioned. The International Building Code, the options available to us, this is one of the first times that they've actually made options. So remember, there were over 30, and y'all have addressed them. And the one thing I want everybody to understand, these are matters that you should encourage debate. Debate sounds like a bad word, but it's not. That means that Garnet, Gene, the mayor, Denise, and Tony all get to bring different points of interest to the table. So, whereas, just for clarity's sake, the one for everybody in the audience, this wasn't taken to the planning commission. It never was. And matter of fact, in the future, it wouldn't be taken either. It would go back to the zoning and planning committee. So, for clarity's sake. But the idea I would hope and encourage that the council will always continue to have the opportunity of debate respectfully of each other. And at the same time, this is a great opportunity to make it better than what it was. So that isn't an endorsement one way or the other. Actually, if it was an endorsement, we might have just made a motion to carry, but instead we brought it forward last July with the opportunity to make those changes. Ironically, we think we're all talking about items 1 through 10. Well, I'll remind you there's actually 32, and we've actually amended many of those to reflect that. So, you know, just, I think this thing gets a little carried away, but debate is part of what we do here, and that's respectful of each other. Wouldn't you agree?
I would. And this is it's a difficult situation because as you get into the discussion, I heard the mention of zoning, subdivision, and the development code, and the zoning and the subdivision address use and dividing property, and then this is the final step in development are these codes, and they all are very confusing. So you've worked through the first two, and now we're down to the development side, and soil and erosion issues are already addressed by the state, and the state they amend these international building codes and then leave these items to the local government, which y'all are addressing. I understand it's difficult. As it was mentioned on these codes, you'll have, I can't tell you how many numbers of folks who contribute to the drafting of the international code before it's even approved. And then the state makes amendments to those and says, these are the bare minimum, and it's only recently they've said we'll leave to the local government the discretion you have.
And those are clarification items. A lot of them were just clarification where it was kind of up in the air about what was what.
I appreciate y'all's effort.
I do too. The only other thing I'd say to that is, unfortunately, sometimes I find myself in a quandary. Don't want to sound like an endorsement, although I'm not afraid to give one when the council asks of it. They've been very good in that regard. But an example is, as we go through, you address one issue here, may have a ripple effect and affect other ordinances as well. So when I point that out or Joy points that out, that's not so much, it's just for y'all's sake, you understand, it's like the dominoes. One falls, hits the other one, we wonder how they all fell on the ground. Well, sometimes we need to look that far ahead to see. So anyway, I just wanted to say that for clarity. Thank you.
Thank you. And I entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Make a motion to go into executive session.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Garnet Smith, second by Gene Bramlett to go into executive session. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're in executive session. We will take about 10 minutes.
Oh, yeah. Denise got
There's not enough candy. Somebody was complaining earlier, no cookies and no candy. Man, this place is slipping.
I said permission.
Yeah, it's the second time somebody said, I didn't want to. Yeah, I know. Yep. No, that's all right. That's all right. See anybody out there?
All right, Gene, where you at? We forgot how to do this. Okay, for the official record, we took no action except to give Dennis guidance on what to do next in executive session. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion.
Got a motion made by Gene, second by Denise to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?